Hi everyone, this is Maisha here, and today we're going to be solving a differentiation question from an AS level paper. So let's read the question together. A curve C has equation y equals to x squared minus 2x minus 24 square root of x. And we need to find the first differentiation for this. The first thing we need to do is to write this in a simpler format so it's easier for us to understand. So I'm going to rewrite the equation y equals to x squared minus 2x minus 24. Instead of the square root, I'm going to write it down as x to the power of a half, because mind you, the square root, in order for it to turn into the exponent, you just need to half it. Okay, now we can do the dy by dx. Okay, before that, I want you to focus in these terminologies that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be using the coefficient. The coefficient is simply the number in front of the x, yeah? And the constant is the number without the x, okay? Without the x. That's called the constant. And the power on top of the x value, it's called either exponent or power, okay? So here for the differentiation, what you need to do is to multiply. So the first step for the differentiation, you need to multiply coefficient with the power. Okay, so you need to multiply the coefficient with the power. So that's going to be 2 times by 1. Because I don't have any coefficient at the front of the x, what it simply means that you need to times the 2 together. So when I don't have any numbers in front of the x squared or x, it means 1, yeah? So 1 times by 2, that's 2, okay? Now, the next step for the differentiation, I need to take away from the exponent, I need to take away by 1, yeah? It's always take away by 1. So 2 take away by 1, that's just 1, right? I don't need to write it down, but I will keep it for now, just so it's easier for everybody to understand. Then I have minus 2. Remember the first step again, for each of these, I need to multiply the power with the coefficient first. So because I don't have any power here, it means 1. So 1 times by 2, that's 2. Minus 2, yeah? Careful with the sign. So that's minus 2. And then the next step, I need to take away whatever I have. So because I don't have anything here, it means 1. So 1 take away by 1, that's just 0, right? So x to the power of 0. And then minus 24 times by a half, that's going to be minus 12. And a half take away by 1, that's going to be minus 1 over 2. Okay, so we need to rewrite this because in maths, this format doesn't look nice, right? So 2x to the power of 1, that's just 2x. And then x to the power of 0, it means 1, right? That's from the power formula. If you go and have a look at my indices law, you will see that x to the power of 0 is always equal to 1. Yeah, so x to the power of 0 always equals to 1. That means 2 times by 1, that's just minus 2. So 2x minus 2 minus 12x to the power of minus a half. Okay, to the power of minus a half. And that is actually my final differentiation. Now, I'm going to explain now the formula, because sometimes I feel like when I give the students just a formula, they find it harder to understand what's happening. So the formula, what I just explained, is actually this. Dy by dx equals to A. A is the coefficient, yeah, the coefficient. And then n is the power, yeah. And then x value, and then n take away 1. Okay, so this is the first step. Yeah, the first step in differentiation is multiplying what? The coefficient times by what? the power, right? The coefficient times by power. So the first step, yeah, just to remind you guys, this is just an example. In dy by dx is to always multiply the power with the coefficient. That's what the a is. The a is the coefficient, okay? Multiply it with the power. That's the first step. And then the second step is x. What to do with this x value? The power is going to be taken away always by 1. So that's the second step. The power is going to be always taken away by 1. And that's how you end up of having this, okay? Now, the d2y over dx2, what it means is that now you need to differentiate not the original equation anymore, but this. Okay, so you need to differentiate whatever you got in the first solution. Okay, so I need to differentiate this. Let me remind you that I need to what? Multiply the coefficient with the power. Because I don't have anything here, we need to assume that it's 1, okay? When there's no power written, it's always 1, okay? So 1 times by 2, that's just 2, right? And x, that's the next step, is x and take away by 1. In this case, our power is 1, right? So 1 take away by 1, that's just 0. So we know that there's nothing else that we need to write down because x to the power of 0, it's simply 1, right? Now for the next part, this one here, let me highlight it for you guys. This part, because it doesn't have any x values and it's simply a constant, when we do the differentiation, it cancels away. It doesn't exist anymore, okay? So you just focus on to the next value. So minus 12 times by minus a half. Minus 12 times by minus a half, that's plus 6, yeah? You can do it over, we can do it over here just to make sure you understand. So minus 12 times by minus a half. So minus negative times by negative, that's positive. And then 12 over 2, that's just plus 6, okay? So does it make sense where the plus 6 is coming from? So plus 6. X, this time the x has a power, right? So minus a half, yeah, minus a half. Mind you that the next step is always to take away by 1. So minus a half, take away minus 1, that's going to give me minus 3 over 2. So your final answer is 2 plus 6x minus 3 over 2. So you're going to get 3 marks for the part A. How are you getting the 3 marks for part A? So you're going to get 2 marks for this and then 1 mark for this, for differentiating the next one, okay? Now, the next part, part B, is asking you to verify that C has a stationary point. So what they mean as a stationary point is that dy by dx is going to equal to 0. Okay, so that's a stationary point. However, how can I achieve dy by dx equals to 0? I need to substitute this x equals to 4 into the first differentiation. So I know that in order for it to be a stationary point, I need to have dy by dx equals to 0. So I need to substitute this x equals to 4 into this, okay? So let's rewrite it down. Dy by dx 2x minus 2 minus 12 x minus a half. Yeah. So 2, instead of x, I'm going to substitute it with 4. Yeah. So 2 times 4, that's just 8. Take away by 2. Take away 4 to the power of a minus half. That's 1 over square root of 4, which is just 2. Yeah. So 12 times by a half, that's just minus 6. So let's have a look. 8 take away by 2, that's 6. 6 take away by 6, that's 0. So yes, dy by dx does equals to 0. You need to write down a statement in order to get 2 full marks. So the first mark you're going to get is for this, and then the second mark you're going to be given for the statement. So always write down the statement. So therefore, dy by dx equals to 0, and it is a stationary point when x equals to 4. Yeah, and that's a statement which is going to give you a full 2 marks. Okay, make sure you write it down like this for it to get. Okay, now let's move on to part C. So part C is asking you to determine the nature of this stationary point, giving a reason for your answer. Okay, so the nature, what it means is that when we did the second derivative from here, I'm just going to rewrite the second derivative. So the second derivative is, okay, this is the second derivative. So what we need to focus on is that if the second derivative is greater than 0, then this is going to be called a minimum point. Okay, this is going to be called a minimum if it's greater than 0. If it's less than 0, then it's going to be a maximum. Okay, so that's how you know what they're asking. So when they ask for the nature, they're trying to understand whether this is a minimum or it's a maximum. Okay, how would I know if this is a minimum or maximum? Okay, because they're both linked questions, I need to go back to my stationary point. What was my x equal to? My x was equal to 4. So in this case, I need to substitute my x equal to 4 into my second derivative, and if I get a value that's less than 0, then it's going to be a maximum stationary point. But if I get a value that's greater than 0, then it's going to be a minimum. Okay, so x equals to 4. Let's substitute that into the second derivative. So that's going to be d2y dx squared equals to 2 plus, I've forgotten to write the x here, my bad, sorry. So x, so instead of the x, I'm going to put as 4. Yeah, 4 minus 3 over 2. Okay, so now 2 plus 4 to the power of minus 3 over 2, that's going to give me 8, right? That's going to be 8. So 1 over 8, sorry. So that's going to be 6 over 8. Yeah? So my final value should be 2.75. Yeah? Now, 2.75 is greater than 0, so this point is actually a minimum, but you need to write down the statement in order for you to get 2 marks. So the statement is d2 squared dx squared equals to 2.75 is greater than 0, therefore stationary point is a minimum, and that is going to give you your full 2 marks. Thank you.